So welcome to the 100th episode of the Six Sales podcast. Now, this wouldn't be possible without our sponsor, Lumen Research. They're an eye-tracking company focused on improving creative media and effectiveness by helping marketers plan, buy, measure, and optimize towards real human attention. Now, my name is Matt Stockbridge, and I had the privilege to be the first guest on this podcast back in May 2020, I believe it was. And today we are recording the 100th episode. So I've been invited to turn the tables, and so for once, Mike Nicholson is in the hot seat. So, how does it feel to be answering the questions, Mike, as opposed to posing the question?
Very weird, but you did excellently there with the sponsor ident. Thank you very much. I might use that on all of our podcasts moving forward.
Thank you. I'm just wanted to make sure I got it right for you, Mike.
Thank you.
So why don't you start by just telling us a bit about yourself and your background?
Okay, so I started in media in the 90s before the internet was a thing. Working in regional newspapers. That was my first media job. Then I went away to set up my own little agency when I was 18, planning and buying and designing print. I was always interested in how things looked, not just how much I could get for them in terms of spaces, media spaces. I then went back to a real job because I overextended myself at MJN and tried to grow too quickly. Worked at the Evening Standard in print, fashion, fragrance, luxury goods with Maurice Mullen, the excellent Maurice Mullen, and then head of sport advertising for a while. I then went to the Express, where I hoped to work on the new London paper, but they didn't win the bid, so I didn't work on that, but I still got to work with Mike Orloff again, which is always a treat. And then worked at a number of different companies in digital, out-of-home video, a company called Blink TV, which was a lot of fun, working at festivals. The screens either side of the main stage basically are turned into advertising screens when there's no band on. So that was a lot of fun. And I started Six Sales with Karen, my wife, 6.5 years ago. And that was basically, haven't looked back. It's going all right.
And so what made you, after all of that experience in different organisations, what made you want to start out with Karen?
Yeah. You mean in marriage or like just in business?
Well, let's go on with business and we can touch on marriage as well.
Yeah, sure. So I was working at a company called Serious Decisions, which is a B2B research and advisory company, now part of Forrester. As I was leaving, they were being acquired by Forrester. And I spent a couple of hours a day, every day on LinkedIn, trying to build a repeatable, scalable process that would allow my new business directors to make C-suite meetings. So we got very good at the back end of LinkedIn, which is LinkedIn Sales Navigator, finding the right people, following them, sending connection requests. But we couldn't make the front end of LinkedIn work so well. And the front end is basically the news feed. And I knew intuitively that the news feed is where all of the attention was, but we couldn't seem to make content work for us. And it was as Serious Decisions was being acquired. And the other part of that as well is I learned a lot about how what I would call proper B2B companies use LinkedIn as a part of their sales and marketing. And it's a lot more than a typical media company would use them. So I kept thinking to myself, if I'd have known this when I was at the Telegraph, I would have been deadly, but I didn't, so I wasn't. And I kept thinking it'd be amazing to bring this back to media because there's so much more to LinkedIn. I mean, when I go through a training program with a client, they can't believe it. It blows them away. Okay, there's so much more to this than we thought. And so you have to almost start small and sort of grow. Anyway, I kind of had a light bulb moment, which was probably 15 years too late. And that light bulb moment was that when people go onto LinkedIn, and I suspect it's true of all social media platforms, but certainly it's true of LinkedIn, they pay a lot more attention to the content that's written by familiar people than they do the content published by faceless brands. And that's not me being rude to brands. That's a term that was used in a study that LinkedIn did with... I've totally forgotten the name of the other company that they went into collaboration with, but they interviewed 2,500 decision makers in B2B and they asked them about a lot of different things. One of those things was thought leadership, and something like 70% of people came back and said they would rather read the thoughts of an easily identifiable author than from a faceless brand. And it kind of the penny dropped. I thought, well, of course, that's how I use it. Like, and that does make sense. If I see somebody I know, I stop to read what they've got to say. That's how social media was born, right? That's what it was for. It was for people to connect with other people, and then the brands moved in. So I thought, well, that's really interesting. And everything I've learned about that's the depth of knowledge I now have on how to use the back end of LinkedIn with my newfound knowledge or theory, at least, on the front end of LinkedIn, I think I'm going to start a business. So we did.
Wow. And so what's sort of Karen's role and your role within the business?
Yeah, so Karen's got 2 businesses. She's greedy. She's an award-winning photographer. Won more awards than you can shake a stick at, Matthew. And she's excellent at it. So she has that business, and she also has to look after me, which is a full-time job. Yes. So Karen is amazing at events, and she's amazing at awards, and she's amazing at writing generally. She gets involved with all of those sorts of things for our clients. And I do the sort of day-to-day running of the business. I also do some writing and some video work with clients, and it works quite well most of the time. We get on quite well most of the time. We met at work, so in fact we've worked together. This is the 3rd time we've worked together, so we're kind of used to it now.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'm sure people would be interested in how do you balance that difference between the kind of the work life and home life? Are you able to sort of draw a line at the end of the day, or?
I'm not. No,
okay.
No, I don't have any lines. Karen likes to. If I start speaking to her about work on the weekend because it's on my mind, she'd rather I didn't. Like, can we leave that till Monday? So, absolutely we can, but I'm thinking about it now, so I'll make some notes and I'll speak to you on Monday. That's fine. One thing I have noticed, and this is the 2nd time I've run my own business, is the blurring of the lines between when is work and when is not work kind of go away for me, at least. In my first business, I set up an office in our 3rd bedroom. It was before we had children. Living in Woodmanstone at the time. Funnily enough, Alistair, who now works for us as our video editor, was our first member of staff, used to come to the house. But we had phones. It was before everyone had mobile phones and stuff. And so we had a landline in the 3rd bedroom, but we also had one put into the living room downstairs. And quite often, because clients knew that, quite often, Friday night, you're watching the telly and the phone would go and you're like, really? And so you never really got away from work. The one thing that I used to love before working for myself was that Friday feeling that you get if you work 9 to 5 in an office. As you're leaving on Friday night, you think, I've got 2 whole days, or I can go and do whatever I want. But I love what I do now. Genuinely, it's not just I'm not being trite. I do genuinely love my work, and there's always more than I can cope with to do. So it keeps me pretty busy.
Brilliant. And where did the idea for the podcast come?
I actually can't remember where the initial idea came from, other than it was during lockdown. Nobody could meet each other in person, of course. I think you and I might have discussed it. So for those that don't know, Matthew and I tried to play football together in the mighty Stone Church. I think we might have discussed it at some point in the pub after a game.
It might have been my idea. Yeah, maybe. I better carry on. Yeah.
Oh, you're taking credit now.
Well,
interesting. It could have been your idea. I'm sure you contributed if it wasn't your idea in its entirety. But I thought, well, I need to do something where I can talk to people. And 6 Cells tagline is people-shaped marketing or people-shaped communications. And what that means in essence is, in a B2B organization, in an ad tech company or a publisher or whatever, it's your people that should be front and center of your communications, because that's where the attention is. People pay attention to people more than brands. And so a podcast seemed very people-shaped. It's 2 people having a conversation. So the first episode, which was you, of course, was literally a Zoom call recorded, ripped and tidied up a little bit from an audio point of view. My previous guest that I recorded today was listened to that first episode before she came to prepare. I said, I wish you'd have listened to another one. Not because you weren't amazing, but because the sound quality was awful. Absolutely. Compared to the HD audio that we have today and 4K video. So it's evolved, and I'm quite proud of it, really, because I get to speak to some amazing people like your good self and many others, 99 others at the time this has gone out. You learn so much from those people. I mean, when you have someone like Rory Sutherland talking to you for an hour and a half, it's difficult not to learn from that. And And so you learn a lot from it, and a lot of people that I meet now, they go, "Oh, the Six Sales podcast." So like it's built a brand within the industry, which is what it was meant to do. It was meant to, I needed to have a presence out there. We're a very small company, so we needed to be punching above our weight, and just by having people on to talk about their life, their business life, it's kind of worked for us. So yeah.
So you mentioned Rory Sutherland. Obviously, you've mentioned myself. Which is obviously very emotional for me. But what are the other kind of memorable guests, memorable moments?
It's been so many. I have to mention Mike Follett because he's the sponsor, but he's excellent. He's so enthusiastic and smart and kind and just a lovely man. John Kieran blew me away. So I don't know if you know John Kieran. He was the founder of System 1.
Oh, yes.
It was called Brain Juicer, I think, before it was called System 1. And he was telling me the story of how he started the company. And 3 months went by and he hadn't managed to get a single client. And then 6 months went by and still hadn't managed to get a single client. And then a year anniversary, still hadn't had a single client. And I was like, just sitting there listening to him thinking, how would you carry on? I mean, we were lucky when we started Six Sales, we got a client pretty quickly, and then we got another client, and then it didn't grow as quickly as we wanted it to, but we had some sort of feedback loop that was positive. But imagine sitting there after a year of starting a business with zero business, like zero. Yeah. Anyway, it took 21 months for him to get his first client, and his first client was Nike. So he went from zero to hero, but it took him 21 months to get there, and I was just absolutely blown away. We ended up going for lunch a couple of times afterwards, just like he's a very inspirational man. Karen Nelson-Field is another super smart woman. Mike's, I know the Lumen Research sponsor this podcast, but Mike's also a big fan of Karen, and I know he wouldn't mind me mentioning her. But there's literally been so many. Just recently, Dean Harris at Co-op was amazing, talking about retail media and attention in store. Nick Ashley, I'm really interested in the retail media space, so we'll definitely have some more guests there. Too many to mention, but you learn something new from everyone. I was speaking to Phil Rowley, who you met on the way in, the head of futures at Omnicom Media Group, and we're talking about second brains and using AI to basically interrogate all of the data that you have and come back with the answer that you want. I think I want to get to the point where all of the podcasts are somewhere where you can just say, what do I know about marketing effectiveness now? And it just goes into all 100 episodes and takes the best bits of all of them and brings it back and go, that's what we know. That's what we've learned. Because I think I've probably forgotten so much, because when you're, as you're probably gathering now, as you're looking at your notes and getting ready for your next question, you're not always listening as much as you hoped that you would. And now I don't do the editing anymore. We've got the fabulous Alistair, who worked with me at MJN all those years ago. I don't even listen to them back as much because you don't find the time and stuff, which is a bit of a shame, but I'll fix it with AI somewhere along the line.
Of course you will. And so have you got, are there any types of people or people in different areas and everything that you would love to get onto this, that you've been thinking about? Or
yeah, I've asked Mark Ritson a few times and he's ignored me. So if you're watching, Mark, come on, you want to. Because I like to read his articles in Marketing Week, and contrarian. And I like that. I think it's important to have an opinion. Sometimes if you're working within an organisation, and obviously he pretty much works for himself, albeit he obviously has to probably report to Marketing Week in some way, shape, or form, but he can say what he wants, and that's what I love about working for myself. If I've got an opinion, I can share it. Whereas if you work in a big company, sometimes you feel like you maybe can't share the thoughts that you want to share. I mean, especially a media agency, right? I had a conversation with someone working at Group M, and they were talking about what we do at Six Sales and getting their senior leaders to talk and how we could help them with that. But they tied themselves up in knots, because if you think about the number of clients Group M have got, if you say something over here, which is good, that this client likes that client over there might not like that, and so it's very difficult when you're in a big company to be able to sort of speak your mind, and I think that's a bit of a shame. Andrew Tyndall from System 1, talking of which, he talked about shit marketing panels where everyone's in violent agreement, and I think that's what happens, right? You sit there and go, oh yeah, I agree with that, and then the next person goes, yeah, I agree with that as well. It would be great to get a couple of people from one side of the argument and a couple from the other, and let them fight to the death. Metaphorically speaking, of course. You might learn something then. Like if you have to defend a position and then put forward your ideas, via data and experience and stuff, that might be more interesting. But
yeah, I've definitely been, you probably have too, some of those sessions where they've done that, you've debated a point. And what I found quite interesting is sometimes defending the contrarian point of view is in some ways is easier to do, because the sort of the nice side, the virtuous side, the thing that everyone should agree on, everyone comes back on. So could be a thought for another direction for the podcast in the future, maybe.
Well, funny you should say that. I have another direction for the podcast, or a second version of, which has a working title.
An exclusive, have we, Mike?
Well, no, I've spoken to a few people in John Walsh's Excellence WhatsApp groups, industry WhatsApp groups, but it's basically, the working title is Can I Pitch It? Mm-hmm. And in my head, I can hear A Tribe Called Quest. Can I kick it? I'm thinking.
I think some of us were going there.
Yeah, if you're of a certain age.
Yes, you can.
And the idea is you have somebody very senior from the buy side of our industry and somebody senior from the sell side of our inventory, and they have 6 minutes probably, because why not, 6 L's, to pitch their wares, and then 6 minutes of Q&A, and then the buy side gives feedback on the product, the service, the positioning, how they would see it working or not within their organization. So a bit like Dragon's Den, but for media and ad tech. So I'm having lunch with a senior agency exec on Thursday. So I hope, and he's expressed an interest of potentially being a dragon, if we can call it that. Probably not, from copyright reasons. So once I have that, we'll have a pilot up and running. Yeah, maybe a like a llama. Llama's Den doesn't have the same ring, does it? No.
Or actual ones to be considered. So I think what would be quite interesting, because obviously everything you've talked about very articulately about your background, so on, people are aware of you on this, but I've seen some people may not know a bit more about some of your other passions, and we've already sort of touched on obviously the playing of football being a passion, but and there's a lead into this, but you are quite a passionate, and obviously you can tell this by his accent, a Liverpool supporter, and you have been for at least the last 2 years, is that right?
Jesus, Matt. Yes, I've been a Liverpool supporter since I was 4.
Okay, sorry, my mistake.
I used to go to Anfield through the glory Houllier and Evans era, and then I stopped going when we got good again. So I think it's best I stay away. But I've been a Liverpool supporter. I'm quite greedy from a football point of view. I have 2 teams. So my dad, my granddad were all Sutton United fans. So that's my local team, if you like. So I go there every home game pretty much, because it's 10 minutes down the road. And I used to go to Anfield before we had kids, but that's a whole day out for a home game. So I don't go so much anymore. And then I coach at Sutton United as well. So I did under 7s to under 16s with my son and his team. And now I'm back doing under 7s. So pretty much when people say, how was your weekend? I basically say football. I go on a Saturday, watch it on coach it on a Sunday morning, watch it Sunday afternoon, and then it's Monday again. And
it's interesting because it's like, okay, I get that Sutton is your local team and you have a team you've supported for years, but it feels as though when you get into something, you can't help but want to get involved and to help out and other things you can do, because you're involved with the Ball Boys and you're more than just a fan, I suppose.
It's amazing. Yeah, I never thought. So the story is, when I was very young, so up to the age of probably 15, something like that, I wasn't allowed to go to Liverpool games because it was the 80s, and there was trouble in football, and my parents wouldn't have any of that. So I used to go anyway. Still, obviously, when they were at Wimbledon, your team, the old Plough Lane or Crystal Palace or Tottenham, I'd go to the away games, and you could just turn up then and get in a queue and get a ticket. But obviously, everything's changed now. I've forgotten where I was going with this. What was the point? Getting involved. Yes, of course. Yeah. So I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And then I got home and away for many years with Liverpool, and I absolutely loved it. And I couldn't think that anything could ever get close to that. Certainly not non-league football. But when I came back and I started coaching my son when he was 7, and I came back as a coach, and then got involved with the club. And I know the chairman and the CEO and the COO, and they're like, we have a drink after a game and stuff like that. You just feel so. Like, it's a bit like Cheers, where everyone knows your name. You feel like you belong there. Like, so much more than I ever felt like I belonged with Liverpool, because, as you can tell from my accent, I don't spend a lot of time in Liverpool. I love Liverpool, the city and the team. Don't even mind Everton, really. But lovely people, lovely city, lovely team. Sutton just hits a bit different. You just feel like you're a part of it.
That's amazing. But it shows that, but it does, it's interesting that it talks to the fact that you know, when you get involved, I appreciate that they responded, but a lot of fans will go along and won't make that effort to get involved. And it sounds like it's almost like part of a family. But if we go back to Liverpool, what's interesting is because it seems, oh, well, you know, I live down south, they're up there, and I'm just a big fan. But your sort of passion towards them and your feelings toward them is a bit deeper than that, because you've actually written a book about the Hillsborough disaster. So just talk a bit about how that sort of started and began and went through.
Yeah, so so the day of the Hillsborough disaster, my best friend Richard and I were at Plough Lane, where Wimbledon played Tottenham. Now, previously to that, Richard had written off to the club to try and get semi-final tickets. Liverpool playing Nottingham Forest at Hillsborough. Of course, we didn't get them. It's the pinnacle of optimism to think that we'd get semi-final tickets when at that stage we hadn't even been to Anfield for a league game. So that didn't happen, and thank goodness it didn't happen. And also I would have had to basically tell lies to my mum and dad and say I was staying at Richard's and go, because wouldn't have been allowed to. So yeah, that bothered me. But then the way that the media reported on the Hillsborough disaster was disgusting, basically, and there was a lot of lies. But in those days, there was no internet, there were no camera phones, and so you were basically told what to think by Murdoch, basically, and others. But and what they told you is what it is, and there's no other way of, you know, there's no right to reply. There's no internet where you can go and find out other things. Anyway, later on, after that, the internet started to get much bigger, and Liverpool had chat rooms where you could go in and talk to other fans, and I got into that in a little way. It was when I was going to games and I'd meet people, and I always remember they came up with these 100 shirt numbers, and like I was read my 86, that was my sign-on number on the chat boards, and everyone was encouraged to get their number on the back of their shirt, so that when you go to the pubs in the sand and stuff like that, the game, you go, oh, 86, it's Mike, and you go and introduce each other, and it was just quite a nice little club where we'd talk about the club that we loved, and talk about how badly we were doing in the league and the cup and everything else that we were in at the time. And anyway, so I started to learn. There was a Hillsborough board. There's a whole section dedicated to Hillsborough, and I started reading and just couldn't believe how different people's experiences were to what I'd seen in the news. And then I started going to Liverpool a lot more and then meeting people, and I've got no filter. I asked people. It probably was not a very good question to ask somebody, but I'd ask people about it, and I learned more about it, and I got more and more angry. And fast forward to, I think, around 2011, I was at the Telegraph, head of Telegraph TV, which was video advertising, essentially, to keep it short. And I got friendly with the video editors that were creating the content. And I thought, I love video. I'd love to be able to create some video. So I went to Rain Dance to do a documentary making course. And I still remember to this day, the tutor said, your first project, it has to be something you know a lot about and something you're passionate about, because this is going to be a lot harder than you think. And it was, and he was right. So I made a documentary. Anyway, I made a documentary that went online. The idea was there'd been some incredible documentaries on Hillsborough, but they tend to get aired whenever the TV station wants to air them, and then they're tucked away somewhere where you can't find them. So what I wanted is there to be something online that people could go to in 100 years' time and hear from people that were at Hillsborough about what happened at Hillsborough. So, you know, uncensored, if you like, and free to all. And that led to Amberley Publishing getting in touch with me at one of the anniversaries and saying, we're looking for somebody to write a book about the anniversary. Would you consider it? So initially my thought was no, because I was busy with work and I'd never written anything that long. And I liked writing, but that was quite the undertaking. But my wife, Karen, has written plays that she didn't get published and books that she didn't get published because she wanted to change them more than the publisher was happy with. And she basically told me, you bloody are doing this. There's no way. I've been trying to get published my whole life. There's no way that a publisher's coming to you and you're going to say no. And she was right. Like, it was hard because I was working full time and then having to come home in the evening to start writing. And a lot of that research was trawling through quite upsetting police reports and witness reports and stuff like that. And just, I'm quite a sensitive soul, really. So yeah, it was pretty tough. But I'm glad I did it, and it was the most important thing for me. It was received well by the people that featured in it. They said some quite nice things, and it helped them to get things off their chest that they couldn't perhaps talk to other people about. So yeah, it was good.
That's amazing. And so, has there been anything have you ever? I mean, obviously, it's like the kind of thing you say, oh, everyone got a book in you or an album and everything else, and obviously we talk about more.
I haven't got an album.
Is there? Could you see yourself doing some more writing? Is that something? I mean, that I can appreciate the process and the subject matter. It's a tricky balance because you're massively passionate about it, but it's very moving as well. But having got the back end of that process now to look into publishing more, because obviously a lot of people, even in this space, that's one of the things that they're often doing is putting out new books and bits and pieces as part of the, establishing them and their point of view, their process of doing things.
Yeah. I can. It's just finding the time. I mean, I write for a living. I ghostwrite for execs in our industry, so I'm writing every day, and I love it. So that that's not a problem. The two ideas I had is one is putting people at the heart of your marketing and what that looks like. Because I've got 6.5 years track record of that now. Some great success stories, some great people that you'll all know in our industry that have done well out of that. And the other one is my coaching journey. I used to coach some of the players that you now play with, Dominic and Toby and Andy Brewer and Blake Seabrook and people like that at AFC Sutton, the mighty AFC Sutton. But it wasn't really coaching as I know it now. I didn't have any coaching badges at that time. I basically just throw some cones and a goal down and say, right, this is what we're going to do. But then when Jamie was old enough to join Sutton United as an under-7, he's 17 now, I went and started doing my coaching badges, and so level 1, level 2, UEFA B, and the FA Youth Award and stuff like that. And I've learned so much. And if I look back at how I used to coach to how I coach now, it's almost embarrassing. You think, oh, it's so bad, but I didn't know, because you don't know what you don't know, right? And so I'd love to write a book for a parent that's suddenly didn't step back quick enough and has been given the balls, bibs and cones and go, oh, is it me now? Is it to take them on that journey and what that might look like, and maybe hopefully accelerate some of the mistakes that they'll probably make that I made. And it sort of help them, like, this is what an under-7 season might look like, and the things that you need to focus on and the things you don't need to focus on. And it's not PlayStation for dads and all of those things that people don't really, they see Mourinho shouting or someone like that on the telly and they think that that's the way you should be with kids. And, there's so much that I've learned over the years. But whether I'll ever get around to them or not, I don't know. I've got my book out. I'll probably stick to that.
Fair enough. Well, I think that's all the questions that I have written down.
Okay.
Now, other than the questions I've asked, if there was another question that you are either hoping I would ask, maybe one that I would ask or that I haven't, or one that you were definitely hoping I wasn't going to ask, which one of those, can you think of anything? This is your opportunity, Mike, for the next 100
question.
Yeah, next 100 episodes, you'll be back in this seat and, doing the preparation and wishing, this could have been my opportunity. I'm in the hot seat. The cameras are on you.
No, not really. But the one thing I would say is if people listening or watching are in sales, some sort of commercial role, marketing, don't underestimate the power of your people, would be my message. And what I mean by that is we've mentioned some names today. There are some giants working inside your organization that have huge reputation, amazing relationships, and that's the reason you pay them the big bucks, is because they can come in and they can open doors and they can go and have meetings. But you do precious little with them, or most people do precious little with them, on the most scalable form of marketing communications, being in our industry things like LinkedIn or native advertising towards content, like a podcast like this. I'm speaking to Blake after this from ReadPeak. It's the native DSP we use. We found that by promoting people-shaped content, so this kind of conversation on our website, and driving to it from the likes of The Guardian, The Independent, The Times, our session time went from around 2 minutes as our average session time to 25 minutes. That's thousands of percent increase, because people like to hear from people. And if this conversation was a part of marketing, which obviously it isn't, although hopefully it's going to help Six Sales, but that's not what we're doing it for, then people would rather listen to this and learn something than be pitched to, like by a brand. We do this and you should do this, and contextual, or, like AI or whatever it is. So it's a conversation. It feels like content. It doesn't feel like advertising. And when you write a personal piece on LinkedIn about a problem the industry's got and how you're trying to solve it, that's content. If you say, we do contextual advertising and you should buy it, that's advertising. And nothing wrong with advertising. We've made our career to a greater or lesser extent out of advertising. But if we look at attention and how attention's divided between content and advertising, there's no question. I just mentioned 25 minutes was the average session time for people watching the Six Sales podcast. The average attention to an IAB standard format is 1.2 seconds. So 25 minutes, 1.2 seconds pays to be the content. And you're full of, if you've got a sales team, a CEO, you've got so many people that are far more interesting than your brand, and they're right there. So put them front and center of your content, and I think you'll win.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because if you think about some of the sort of celebrity business crossover people that do that actually, rather than endorsement of we'll get this person to come talk about our whiskey or whichever, they actually have someone who's got skin in the game and actually is passionate about it. The difference when they're coming across and talking about whatever there is, it has a real resonance with people, and it's obviously far more effective.
And I was speaking to a previous guest today, and I was talking about how the podcast has really taken off since we brought it into the studio and made it in 4K video, which was really surprising to me. It's probably something that I kind of learnt from John Evans on the Uncensored CMO, because he started to do video far earlier than I did. But the viewership has gone through the roof compared to what it used to be when it was audio only. But you think it's a podcast, right? Yeah. Podcasts are audio only. That's the whole beauty of it. It's portable and you can put it in your ear wherever you are. But people like to watch podcasts. They like to watch people having a conversation. Yeah. One of the nicest bits of feedback I had recently was somebody said, I loved your podcast with, I can't remember who it was, it might be Nick Ashley at Tesco. I felt like I was just sat quietly in the room with you and listening to the conversation. I love that. Beautiful. A little bit stalkery, but but no, I love that. Yeah.
Totally safe way and a very positive way, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that is all the questions that we have for you today, Mike. So just to say thank you for putting yourself...
More fun than I thought it was going to be.
Well, I did need a little bit of persuading. Yeah. But if you think, just to take a moment about, I think you'd said to me, like most podcasts in the last 6 or 7 episodes, and the fact that it's got to 100 and the attention within that has expanded, that it's creating a kind of momentum of its own and people are generally interested in it. And I hope that through what you're sharing today, people have got a bit more of an insight into the man behind the podcast.
That's something else to maybe mention, actually. I was speaking to John Evans on LinkedIn about maybe creating what it's like to create a podcast episode, because they've exploded. I mean, a lot of the podcasts that are on Spotify or whatever are dormant because, to your point, people they think, this is a good idea, we'll start a podcast, and think, my God, that's quite a lot of work, and I got 50 views, and that's no good, and then, so they stop. But what I would say is... expect it to be a long game. There's definitely room for another podcast. There's so many more than when I started the Six Sales podcast, and I assume that will continue to grow. But there's definitely room for another one if you have something of value to give. And what I think the Six Sales podcast has is the guests. It's not, no one comes to listen to me. Thankfully, I hate my voice, but it's the guests, right? And the guests are normally senior, normally intelligent, personable people that have got insights to share. And so anyone can start that. But it's a marathon, not a sprint, 100%. I mean, I think I got 30 views on my first one.
And unbelievable. That was such a classic.
Yeah, I know. You should check. Please don't, because the audio quality is terrible. We'll re-record it. I'll ask you those questions again, and we'll do it in glorious 4K. But also, don't think about it just in terms of how many views did it get. Oh, only 30 this week. Think about it in terms of the network effect of that marketing, because if I interview you on a podcast, you share it on your social media, then your company reshares that and says, oh, Matt was on a podcast. And so the reach you get for just being the host of a podcast and your brand goes with that, of course, bright orange. You can't mistake it. Like, so I've since orange went away, I've basically taken their color and run with it. And so there's so many more benefits over and above how many views views did it get?
Yeah.
There's the impressions that the artwork gets, and the what would you call it? The penetration you get into different companies. So if you wanted to speak to Ogilvy, get Rory Sutherland on your podcast, because people in Ogilvy will pay attention to that because they're his colleagues, and so so there's so many more benefits to it. But you've definitely got to think of it as a consistency and frequency. Stick to it and just know that this isn't going to grow anytime soon.
Yeah, and that point about the views really resonates, because obviously, as we've talked about, when in my career I've been looking at effectiveness and evaluating a campaign, people usually want to drill down to something very simple quite quickly to measure success or failure, and say, but there's quality of impressions, there is quality of views, there are other things that we're establishing here, and of course everyone will know that the long game, if you like, applies in all kind of business, because we're all constantly trying to build up that that mental availability. That part of it is another step forward, and just doing 6 or 7 of them, even if they were fantastic, committing over a period of time and getting those people in, and as you said, articulate, intelligent, and so on, people start to render. I know what. These are the staples of this service.
Yeah, I mean, and this is one of the many things that I agree with Rory Sutherland on, but people, marketers in particular, are terrible at trying to discount things if it's not easy to measure.
Yes.
So I mentioned the native advertising that we do to promote our clients and the podcast and stuff. That's bought on a cost per click basis. So you get however many downloads you get, and that's great. But just think of the number of impressions that need to be served before you get a click. Like you get, if it's a 1% click through rate, there's 100 impressions before you get a click. And that's all valuable as well. Now, how you measure it is that's your domain, but that's branding, that's front of mind awareness, and that's all free essentially in that particular scenario. But because it's so hard to measure, it gets discounted, and I think that's a really big mistake.
That's a fair point. Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you for your time. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to get you to swap seats. And
are you going to thank people for listening to the Six Sales podcast?
I was coming to that, obviously. Okay. I'm quite new to this game, you see.
Yes. You're excellent, man. Much better than me.
The Matt Stockbridge podcasts, sister, will be coming on in due course. But thank you, everyone, for watching and for listening to us today. And please like and share. Do we say that?
Always.
Good. Always like and share. And thanks again. Subscribe.
Smash the subscribe button.
Do that.
The kids say.
So, yeah, do
Smash
that. Do that thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks to Lumen Research as well for making this possible, and thank you again to you, Michael.
Thank you very much.